Why, really, Eriximachus, said Aristophanes, I intend to say something a bit different from what you and Pausanias said. For I think people do not fully perceive the power of Eros, since if they did, they'd build him their greatest temples and altars, and offer their greatest sacrifices, whereas now they do nothing of the kind, though it very much needs doing. For he is the most philanthropic of gods, a helper of human beings, and a physician for those ills whose cure would be greatest happiness for the human race. So I will try to describe to you his power, and you will teach others. You must first learn human nature and its condition, for our ancient nature was not what it is now, but of another kind. In the first place, there were 3 sexes among men, not 2 as now, male and female, but a 3rd sex in addition, being both of them in common, whose name still remains though the thing itself has vanished. For one sex was then derived in common from both male and female, androgynous both in form and nature, though the name is now applied only in reproach. Again, the form of each human being as a whole was round, with back and sides forming a circle, but it had 4 arms and an equal number of legs, and 2 faces exactly alike on a symmetrical neck. There was a single head for both faces, which faced in opposite directions, and 4 ears and 2 sets of genitals, and one can imagine all the rest from this. It also traveled upright, just as now, in whatever direction it wished, and whenever they took off on a swift run, they brought their legs around straight and somersaulted as tumblers do, and then with 8 limbs to support them they rolled in a swift circle. The reason there were 3 sexes of this sort was that the male originally was the offspring of the sun, the female of the earth, and what has a share of both, the moon, because the moon also has a share of both. They were spherical both in themselves and in their gait, because they were like their parents. Well, they were terrible in strength and force, and they had high thoughts and conspired against the gods, and what Homer told of Philoctetes and Otis is also told of them. They tried to storm heaven in order to displace the gods. Well, Zeus and the other gods took counsel about what they ought to do, and were at a loss, for they didn't see how they could kill them as they did the giants, whose race they wiped out with the thunderbolt, because the honors and sacrifices they received from human beings would disappear. Nor yet could they allow them to act so outrageously. After thinking about it very hard indeed, Zeus said, I believe I have got a decree by which men may continue to exist and yet stop their intemperance, namely, by becoming weaker. I'll cut them in 2, he said, and they'll be weaker and at the same time more useful to us by having increased in number, and they'll walk upright on 2 legs. But if they still seem to act so outrageously and unwilling to keep quiet, he said, I'll cut them in 2 again so that they'll have to get around on 1 leg, hopping! Ha 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 ha!
Saying this, Zeus cut the human beings in 2, the way people slice apples or as they cut eggs. He ordered Apollo to turn around the faces of whoever he'd cut to where the cut was made, so that man would be more orderly by contemplating his own division. And he bid Apollo heal the other wounds. Apollo turned the face around and drew together from all sides the skin on what is now called the belly. Asperses are closed by a drawstring, and tying it off in the middle of the belly, he made a single mouth which people called the navel. And he smoothed out most of the other wrinkles and carefully shaped the chest with a tool of the sort shoemakers use to smooth out wrinkles in the leather on a last. But he left a few wrinkles around the belly and the navel, as a reminder of the ancient suffering. Now, when their nature was divided in 2, each half, in longing, rushed to the other half of itself, and they threw their arms around each other and intertwined them, desiring to grow together into one. They died of hunger and inactivity too, because they were unwilling to do anything apart from one another. Whenever any of the halves died and the other was left, the one left sought out another and embraced it, whether it meant half of a whole woman, what we now call a woman, or of a man. And so, they perished. But Zeus took pity and provided another device, turning their genitals to the front, for up till then they had those on the outside, and they used to beget and bear children not in each other, but in the earth, like locusts. Well, he turned them to the front, and so caused them to beget in each other, in the female through the male, for this reason, so that if male met female, they might in their embrace beget and their race continue to exist, while at the same time, if male met male, there'd at least be satiety from their intercourse, and they'd be relieved and go back to work and look after the other concerns of life. So Eros, for each other, is inborn in people from as long ago as that, and he unites their ancient nature, undertaking to make one from two, and to heal human nature. Each of us, then, is but the token of a human being, sliced like a flatfish, two from one. Each, then, ever seeks his matching token. Men sectioned from the common sex, then called androgynous, are woman lovers, while on the other hand, women from this sex are man lovers. Women sectioned from a woman pay scant heed to men, but are turned rather toward women, and lesbians come from this sex. Those sectioned from a male pursue the masculine because they are slices of the male. They are the most manly. Some say they're most shameless, but they're wrong. They don't do it out of shamelessness, but out of boldness and courage and masculinity, cleaving to what is like themselves.
When every lover meets his own particular half, they are then marvelously struck by friendship and kinship and Eros, and scarcely willing to be separated from each other even for a little time. These are the people who pass their whole lives with each other, but who can't even say what they think they wish for themselves by being with each other. No one can think it's for the sake of sexual intercourse that the one so eagerly delights in being with the other. Instead, the soul of each clearly wishes for something else it can't put into words. It divines what it wishes, and obscurely hints at it. Suppose Hephaestus with his tools stood over them as they lay together and asked, "What is it you people wish in being at each other's side?" And suppose, if they were perplexed, he further asked, "Is this your desire, to be in the same place with each other as much as possible, so that you're not parted from each other night and day? Because if that's what you want, I will fuse you and weld you into the same thing, so that from being two you become one, and as one, share a life in common as long as you live. And when you die, even there, in the place of the dead, you'll again be one instead of two. Even there, you can share being dead in common. See if it is this you love, and if it will suffice for you, should it happen." We know that not a single lover on hearing this would refuse it, nor appear to wish for anything else. He'd simply think he'd heard what he desired all along, namely to join and be fused with his beloved, to become one from two. The cause is that this was our ancient nature, and we were wholes. Eros, then, is a name for the desire and pursuit of wholeness. And, as I say, before we were one, but now we have been dispersed by the god, due to our injustice. As the Arcadians were dispersed by the Spartans. So there is fear that if we should not be well ordered towards the gods, we shall be split in two again and go around like the people molded in profile on tombstones, sawed in half through the nose, born like split dice. This is why all men should urge each other in all things to worship the gods, so we may escape this and meet with that, because Eros is our guide and general. Let no one act to the contrary. Whoever acts to the contrary is hated by the gods. For by becoming friends and reconciled to the god, we shall discover and meet with our own beloved, which few now do. And Eryximachus must not interrupt me and poke fun at this account on the ground that I only mean Pausanias and Agathon. Perhaps they really are of this kind, and are both masculine in nature, but I'm saying this about everyone, men and women alike, that this is how our race would be happy if we should fulfill our love and each meet with his own beloved, returning to his ancient nature. If this is best, then necessarily what is nearest to it under present circumstances is also best. That is, to meet a beloved who is naturally like-minded and congenial. In singing praises to the god responsible for it, we would rightly hymn Eros, who at present brings us the greatest benefits, and leads us into what is properly our own, and provides greatest hope in the future that if we offer reverence to the gods, he will restore us to our ancient nature, and heal us and make us blessed and happy. "There, Eryximachus," he said, "that's my speech about Eros, of a different kind than yours. As I begged you, don't poke fun at it, so that we may also hear what each of the remaining speakers will say, or rather, what each of the two will say, for only Agathon and Socrates are left."